Good afternoon, almost evening. Sean here, Mountains Garage. I'm still grinding away on the 6-liter turbo LS project. Let's see what I did today. At the end of the last video, I was waiting for my cast aluminum engine paint to dry on the front timing cover. I came out the next morning, yesterday, and I used my seal driver to push the seal in. I didn't need the press. It's just a nice, small, sturdy seal, unlike the big rear main that can bend easy. I put the timing cover on with the bolts loose. All the bolts, I'm just cleaning up the factory ones, and they turn that bare metal color, and then I'll clear coat the whole block. They look pretty good that way. Kind of matches the theme I got going on that I didn't even plan on. And then I dug out the harmonic balancer. I have two of these. Camaro Firebird spacing, fluid damper, but they're not, let's just say they're of unknown manufacturing. No instructions, no paperwork, none of that. So a typical aftermarket balancer sometimes require honing. If this was an actual engine machine shop and I had a sun and hone, I'd probably have a sunning adapter made just for clearancing the ID on a harmonic balancer. But I don't. I had to remove the black coating to even get this to start on the end of the crankshaft. This is a scene of the crime. I used my brake cylinder hone with the tension wound up pretty tight with a brand new set of big stones. A little bit of lube that happened to be sitting right here. About anything will work. And in about 3 or 4 minutes, I had it so at least it would start on the end of the crankshaft. And then with the help of my semi-wore out LS balancer installation tool, we managed to force it on there. It didn't go that bad. I'm really careful of the threads on the end of the crank, so I make sure the installation tool is in as far as it possibly can be. And I keep resetting it and giving it a little bit of lube, hoping for the best. We got around there. It went on pretty tight. And then I tightened up the bolts on the timing cover. Everything's nice and level here. That's good. And installed the bolt with a dab of Loctite. I then realized that my LS balancer removal tool is not going to work because it's not 3 open holes. And these bolt holes are larger than what you expect to see on a typical harmonic balancer. So I will need to make a tool to get it back off someday. While it's still sitting on the bench, I'm going to install the 4 block plugs, and I'm going to get a small piece of chain and get it back on the engine stand. I need my bench back so I can modify the windage tray before I put on the oil pan. I installed my block plugs. That takes a 17 millimeter Allen hex, and the coolant and oil are the same. Like I said in the previous video, I left this loose to prime it. If you're inclined to build a primer, the adapter, this is an 1/8 inch pipe to M18 adapter that I used to hook up to a regular oil pressure gauge, also threads in to that hole. They're all the same thread. This is my 302-3 oil pan equivalent. It comes complete, including gasket, with the exception of a windage tray. This is a truck windage tray that I've cleaned several times. It's as clean as it's going to get. It's got a pleasing gold color. I've marked roughly with a Sharpie. I want to maintain these front holes. A lot of people cut them way back here. I'm going to go across that way, around the bolt hole, and then back where that goes technically downhill, but uphill in the position we're in. And I'm going to saw that off, so this piece will be missing. And we'll see how that fits. I got to come up with some nuts to hold it on. The oil pan kit comes with 1/2 inch MPT holes on both sides in the front for turbo drains. I loosely installed the plugs. I'm not sure if I'm going to run 1 or 2 turbos or whatever, so I just put them there so I didn't lose them. The bolt down the baffle. They give you the 4 screws for that, or bolts. Drop a Loctite, they're going to thread right in. They give you the bolts for the adapter. This is an ICT billet, single 1/8 NPT outlet that I already had. I thought I had a dual, but I can't find it, or I don't have it. They come with a solid plug and the gasket and the O-ring for the pickup. They give you the 2 bolts for the pickup. And of course, the bolts to hold the oil pan on. The factory oil cooler line block-off plate, a lot of them are like this, and you can drill and tap them and put an 1/8 inch fitting in. GM knew what they were doing. The pan comes with an oil filter adapter that takes a later filter, the 7060 or equivalent. This is a short version. I think they make a long one, but I don't have the part number in front of me. But it comes with a threaded adapter to fit that. I went and took a oil filter adapter off a truck pan that I had, because I have a pile of the 1042, the short version, and I also have a couple 1522s, disregard the 5. A 1522 oil filter is the long version of the 1042, and it threads right onto the truck adapter. I like that. This adapter seems to be a little better quality. I like that it goes on with an Allen. Strange the Allen isn't metric, but they probably did whatever they could do. This one has a hex. It's a little bit lighter. But if you want to run the late filter, use the adapter that came with it. If you want to run the early filter, go get one out of an old truck pan. If you're looking for applications, that 7060 fits my 2011 3/4 ton Suburban 6 liter. And the 1042 fits the 2001 5.3 that I have in my old Dodge. And the 1522, the longer version of the 1042, was in my Envoy 2004. Same thing as the Trailblazer with the straight 6. I trimmed up the windage tray on the bandsaw. It came with a green O-ring for the pickup tube. I know the pump had a green O-ring in it before, and it seemed to fit nice and snug. It's a trick getting the second bolt in. As long as you don't drop it, it's not that big a deal. So that all fits nice. I tried the pan on without the gasket, and it drops on with a thud. It hits 100% all the way around. No interference. And the pan's so close here, it'll act like its own windage tray. I think it'll be good. I did trim my gasket on all 4 corners. That's ready. I'll apply sealer just right here. The factory used gray. I'll probably use, who knows, I got the clear out. I'll probably use clear, but just cover that potting line with a little bit of sealer. And the $1 million design gasket will do the rest. I did forget to mention in the previous video when I introduced this oil pan, it's clearance for a stroker crankshaft. I believe it'll take up to a 4-inch stroke. I'll double check that, but it is big cubic inch compatible. And that's my 1522. Hangs just below. Gives me a little extra capacity. I like it. Your stock oil pan would have an oil filter bypass located about right there. Aftermarket pans get rid of that, and you should too. That way the oil has to be filtered as long as the barbell holds up in the block. Or I guess if the oil filter gets plugged, it'll just blow it right off the side of the block. There's no bypass. Pan on, that was uneventful. I found some new starter bolts. I thought I found a new starter, but it was for a traditional small block or big block. And I was careful when I pried out the crank sensor when I started this project, and I cleaned it up and stuffed her back in. And I put some paper towel in the end because I'm going to clear coat the whole engine eventually here. Now I'm going to flip it on its side, and like I mentioned, remove the plug and fill up the oil pump, and then flip it all the way over. This is the last time it'll be upside down, on purpose anyway. I gave it a small drink of this imitation Harley-Davidson 2050, and just so I don't get any surprises when it sits overnight, I installed the block-off plate that I'll replace later on with the one with one or two 1/8 inch MPT fittings. But I just don't want it running down the main line and dripping out on the ground overnight, and then I'll be upset I got to clean up a mess. I'm constantly haunted by a few projects that I didn't finish, one of them being the 63 Nova LS Turbo project, but in a good way today because I had bought this ICT billet valley cover for it. that and a new $25 Felpro gasket I bought the other day. Seals up the top of it. I'm not going to run any knock sensors, which would normally be in the valley. That's a better look at the M18 straight thread 1/8 NPT adapter for your gauge fitting. I need to come up with a cam sensor that'll go right there. And these are my eBay head studs. Actually, the quality seems okay. They are what they are. For this, they're a perfect application. This motor, whatever year it is, it's pre-2004-ish. This head stud in all four corners is shorter than the rest. In later years, all the big bolts would be the same length, including those. And it comes with the small ones up top. So all that's left to do to the short block is to soak my lifters in some oil and find some lifter trays, genuine GM ones. Beware of any aftermarket ones. I see lots of instances where the lifter will rotate, and of course that's going to wipe out your cam. So genuine GM lifter trays, period. I'd rather run old ones than new imitations. I also spent the $4 for new cylinder head dowels because I only had one. For a 4-inch bore LS turbo application, and some people even run them on the smaller bore, the LS9, which was GM supercharged engine, is the perfect gasket. It's a 7-layer MLS gasket, but it's buyer beware for sure. I bought a set of Brian Tooley, American made, kind of. They say they're made in Germany, but these are the same gasket, the Mali, whatever you want to pronounce it. Same part number gasket, both quality, both made in Germany. This is a real deal. They're about 45 to 55 bucks a piece, anywhere you buy them. If you go on eBay, they'll say BTR. You Google the part number for the LS9 gasket, it'll come up. So it'll BTR and a part number, which is the same as the GM number. They're like 28 bucks a pair. They're only 5-layer. People say they're not any good. I wouldn't dare to run them. This is not an area I'm going to scrimp on. Apparently I'll scrimp on the head studs, but I won't scrimp on the gasket. I just know lots of people have had okay luck with the head studs. Compared to the factory stretchy bolts, they're probably a step up. But the head gaskets themselves, let the buyer beware. I haven't handled the Chinese gaskets, and I don't plan on it, so I'm waiting for another one of these to come in the mail. I actually got a deal on these, but this is a pair of Brian Tooley's, same thing, and these are what I'm going to use. The other day I washed the cylinder heads whole. I still need to strip them and give them a little reman action and try to make them somewhat pretty. My blast cabinet is not that great. I need to get some new abrasives, so I need to either do that or paint them like this or some combination thereof. And I got Pack 1218 valve springs that are good for 600 lift. This cam is 585, so it should be a good match. I need to soak my lifters and put them in, do some minor stuff, but all in all, we're not quite 2 weeks into this, and I only get to work on it a couple hours a day. It'll be all right. I'll be glad when it's done, because I got all kinds of other things I should be doing, but I just didn't want to put this in there as a dummy all rusted. I'd rather have it pretty much ready to run in the 72 Nova. Anyway, like, subscribe, ring the bell, all that stuff. Thanks for watching. I'll check with you in a day or two.